Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Farms, and I'm standing next to the Eastonmade Ultra that was just delivered a couple hours ago. I believe that this splitter may be the highest quality, fastest working log splitter that is commercial grade, but is still affordable by a farmer or a homesteader or someone who doesn't cut firewood as their primary income. Now, if you guys remember, a few months ago, I introduced you to this vertical power split log splitter, wood splitter, whichever one you call it. And in that video, I said I had decided that was the perfect splitter for me. But that video has 125,000 views, and I read every comment on it, and there are thousands of comments. And the comments about that splitter told me what you guys are looking for in a splitter. And you wanted something that was less expensive and was faster. Now in the future, I'm going to do a video comparing these two splitters and talking about why someone might choose that splitter over this one. And I've also got another splitter that I'm going to be comparing this to. It all depends on your personal needs. What are you looking for? You know, what is your budget? How much wood do you split? What other equipment do you have? What types of trees do you have? And that's going to determine the best splitter. Now, towards the end of the video, I'm going to talk about my partnership with Eastonmade and the integrity of sponsored reviews, but I don't want to start with that. I want to start by getting right into the splitter. So when I say this might be the best value on the market, that's exactly what I mean. Value. This has a 4-second cycle time on a splitter that is around $5,000. Now, $5,000 is a lot of money, and you can get a homeowner splitter for $1,500. But this is in no way comparable to a homeowner splitter. This is a commercial splitter, and most commercial splitters are $12,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, and you can spend $30,000 or $50,000 if you're getting a processor. So let's take a walk around of this machine, show you all the features, and we'll fire it up and split some wood, then I'll do some more talking at the end. Obviously, I can't do a review of this because I just got it, but I've watched so many reviews from channels that I know and respect. Guys like In the Woodyard, Sawing with Sandy, who did very thorough reviews on this splitter already. So I've learned a lot from watching them. And one thing you've got with this is this tow bar is reversible. And I don't mean turning it around because right now it's on there backward. But you can hook this up to either end, which is really convenient. Because like this other splitter that I've got, I wanted it in the corner facing out this way. And so there's no way to tow it into the corner. Let me show you. I wanted it to set right here. Well, I can't really get it back there, so I have to manually move it back there by hand. With this, you can back it in from either direction, so it'd be easy to put it facing into that corner. So this has a locking pin, so you're not going to have it fall out going down the road. I definitely think going down the road, you would want it only on the front for highway speeds because of the weight distribution, but just for around your property, you can haul it from the other end. Since it comes with the tow chains, these are nice heavy-duty tow chains, which tow chains are not a cheap item. Obviously, you've got your jack built in right here. These have a good-sized tire on them, and unlike my other splitter, these tires are rated for full highway speed. Now, the other brand, it's an option. You can get them with the cheaper tires for staying on your own property, or you can get them with the tires that are rated for highway speed. And on that one, I didn't specify I wanted highway tires. I think they're rated for 45, 50 miles an hour. These are rated for 75 miles an hour. You've also got a rubber cap right here that you can pop off, and there's a grease zerk in here to grease your wheel bearings. That's very handy. So here's your receiver on the back side. Now, the first thought is, that's cool because you can tow it from either side. Then we've got these two pieces of large diameter, thick wall tubing. Here's your instruction manual. My Eastonmade Ultra has a 14 horsepower Vanguard engine. I've seen other reviews where it had a Honda and another review where it had a Briggs & Stratton. So obviously Eastonmade has tried out different engine configurations, and this is what they're currently using. It's a pretty simple setup like you're going to see on anything else. You got a fuel on and off here and a choke on and off below it. Here you got your pull rope. So we're not going to pull yet, but it's out away from everything where you're not going to scrape your knuckles up trying to start it. So you got your oil fill here and like an automotive style dipstick right here to check your oil level. Here we have a large gauge that tells you your hydraulic pressure. Comes in handy just for knowing where you're at. Here's your hydraulic fluid reservoir. Looks like they've already filled it up, which is really convenient. And it's nice to be able to check your hydraulic fluid at a glance rather than having to open it up and use a dipstick or try to sight down in it. Okay, it's got a big cap here. Looks like it's a vented cap. It's got a screen in it, and we can definitely see it's full. It's got a really large hydraulic reservoir. When Sandy did his review, he mentioned he had just been up to the plant in Canada and met with Andrew, who's the owner of Eastonmade, and they explained to him what a high-quality hydraulic valve this is. It's a ball-bearing valve that's going to be a lot more smooth to operate and less problematic. So you got a forward position that you hold and a detent on the return. So now let's look at the wedges. We've got two different wedges here. We have a straight wedge for simple splitting. Now you might think if you've got a four-way wedge, why would you want the straight wedge? And I've watched a bunch of videos on it, and for big rounds, a lot of people say it's more efficient to use the straight wedge, especially on this with a really big round and the way the wedge is designed. On a big round, sometimes that top piece will shoot out the top if you're using it with a four-way. One thing that really stands out is the height of the wedge. So from where this drops in, you've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different spots where you can set it up. And that leaves your wedge able to stick up way up here so that those big rounds get fully split. One more thing to mention on this wedge is it's got a little knob right here. And that is so that if this were to slip a little bit, it can't fall all the way through on the ground or even drop down and get your hand stuck or anything. So that's a nice little feature. You like it when companies think of all the little things that you might not think of until it becomes a problem. Another thing is this is a full inch thick steel. Super heavy duty. As we look at the design of this wedge, my first thought would have been that this edge and this edge would meet each other, but they don't. Your wood's going to contact this first and then your side wedges. Now these tips all the way out on the end might be even out with the end of this wedge, but the idea there is the wood will start to split and it'll already be partially split before it gets to the second wedge. If you're trying to split both directions at exactly the same time, it takes more power to get the wood to start to split. As soon as it starts to split, starts coming down the wedge, it reduces the amount of force it takes, and then you hit the second wedge. Both wedges are adjustable up and down to about 1 inch increments. So mostly for an average size round, you're going to pick a height and leave it there. But if you have bigger rounds, you can raise this up. Smaller rounds, you can lower it down. The way that you do this is pull this pin out here, pull this pin out, and that allows you to raise and lower it to these other holes. Now, I'm about ready to fire this up and split some wood, and I think it's at the right height, so I'm not going to do it just for the sake of doing it. But I think what I'll do is start it up and just let it run for a little bit before I go get the firewood. That way it's at least warmed up before I start putting it under a load. So I've already checked. It's got hydraulic fluid in it. It's got oil in it. Obviously, it won't have shipped with gas in it. It did ship with gas in it. So we're ready to fire this thing up. I bet that means they've already started it and tested it at the factory. They probably wouldn't send it out without cycling the splitter. Whereas a lot of times when you buy a product like this, you're putting, oil in the motor for the first time. But they don't ship this with a normal freight broker. They send this out with their own shipper who has it set up perfectly, and it's a very nice receiving process. So now, fuel on. Choke on. So I just cycled it a few times, got the hang of how the controls work, and I like it. There's a few things I like about it, and some of this I heard mentioned in other videos, but the ram comes all the way up and touches the wedge. Biggest pet peeve with the homeowner splitter, well, and also the vertical splitter, is that it does not come all the way through. So what that means is you're going to get to the end, and those pieces are going to still not be fully split. And so I really like that it comes all the way in contacts. It's got good control on it. It's not an auto forward where you can just walk off. That's a major danger thing. So you have to be pushing on it while it's going forward. But then as soon as it's forward, it hits the detent on the way back. But it's got a smooth control on it where if you're going along and it's not where you want, you can just back it up and then go again. Wow, all I can say is that is going to save me so much time splitting. Awesome machine. So now I've talked about all the positives on this splitter. Let's talk about the negatives. And there are a few negatives. No product is perfect for every scenario. So generally, when you say commercial log splitter, it will have auxiliary hydraulic functions. Almost always, that auxiliary hydraulic function is a log lift. And this doesn't have one. Well, why is that? And what am I going to do about it? So, a log lift requires hydraulic flow. And the more hydraulic options you add to it, the more you add to the cost. That's the biggest cost break on a product like this, is your auxiliary hydraulics. So if this had a log lift, it would cost a lot more. Another thing about it not having a log lift is that means I can work from either side of the splitter or both sides of the splitter. And I consider it a benefit to be able to work from both sides. Another feature that a lot of commercial splitters will have is this wedge will have the ability to raise and lower hydraulically. But once again, that's an expensive option. So that leads me into why I ended up with this splitter. This last fall, I went to the Paul Bunyan show. I met several different splitter manufacturers and companies that make firewood equipment. And after that show, I made the contacts, and with the size of channel I have, I had more than one option. I could have picked several other brands of splitters and made that deal. But I picked Eastonmade because of Andrew Easton, for one. He's the owner of the company. You're dealing directly with him. He's a high-energy guy. And I believe this is a company that innovates and pushes the envelope for, what's possible and what is the best option. And when you've got a company that's big enough to make the high-end equipment, but small enough for one person to make an executive decision and go with it, that's where innovation comes from. So once I settled on the fact I was going to make a deal with Eastonmade, I'm on the phone with Andrew, and he says, "What splitter do you want?" I said, "Well, the last time I showed a splitter on my channel, the viewers said they weren't interested in a $10,000 splitter. It's too expensive for what they do." And I was already familiar with his products. I said, "Send me the Eastonmade Ultra because it's only $5,000. And while $5,000 is a lot, it's nothing compared to most of the commercial splitters that have a conveyor or a log lift or this hydraulic option or any of that stuff. All of that requires bigger hydraulic pumps, bigger hydraulic reservoirs, bigger engines, and just makes them a lot more expensive." I said, "I want a splitter that my viewers can relate to." And that's how I ended up with this one right here. But I am left with a problem today. And not really a problem, but when I get a machine, I think, how am I going to use this efficiently? And I knew this was coming, so I cleared out the Quonset hut, and I brought this splitter and my firewood bundler in here, and I'm going to turn this side of the Quonset hut into a firewood processing area. And I've been thinking for the last month while I was waiting on this to arrive, what does a good firewood processing area look like? How is it arranged? Which splitter do you use for what? Does it make sense to have two splitters? And as I thought about that, I thought, how do I manage not having a log lift? Because I got that splitter with the log lift because I deal with a lot of heavy rounds. So I see three options for how to deal with heavy rounds when you don't have a log lift. Number one, you can have a second piece of equipment that splits your logs into manageable size. And that can be another splitter like this one. It can be another splitter like the one behind me that I'm not going to talk about today. Or it can be a log deck. And Sawing with Sandy built a fantastic log deck that allows you to load up a bunch of logs with your tractor or your excavator or your skid steer or whatever you've got, load all that up, and then cut your rounds, and the rounds stay on the deck, and you can do all your work from this height and take them straight off the deck into here. So your first option is a second splitting option. Second option is a nice log deck. And the third option, and this one's kind of controversial, some of you guys might get upset about this, but the third way to deal with not having a log lift is to just toughen up a little bit and pick some logs up. I mean, it's supposed to be work, right? It's firewood. So let me know which one of those options you guys like. I'm going to test out this other splitter, and I'm going to build myself a custom table. But I definitely, I want to talk about it, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for another video. This other splitter is meant for big rounds, and the log deck is meant for logs, longer logs that are medium size. So tomorrow we're going to be right back on the tractor reviews, but I could not wait another day to check this thing out. So I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.